Welcome to the Courage to Be podcast with Tanya Vasallo. Before we get into this episode, I want to share with you that I'm on a mission to close the gender gap in the podcasting world so that more and more women's voices are heard. If you feel that this is something you value too, then please rate, review, and share the podcast. And in exchange, and as my way to say thank you to you, I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. All you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course. Welcome back to the Courage to Be, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And today we have Lauren Kester with us. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to dive deep with you because it's funny that you are into astrology and also human design. You're following your intuition. Like there's so many different topics that I want to go deeper into. But share with us, with our listeners, what is it that you do before we go deeper?
Yeah, perfect. So, hi, I'm Lauren Kester. I'm an astrologer and a mindset coach. And my special sauce is that I mix the woo-woo with the practical. So I'm a very grounded, practical person who's spiritual and can be out there and a little bit woo-woo. So I use astrology to help clients come back to themselves and really tune into their intuition and authenticity. So I work with only women right now, and it's my favorite thing to merge astrology with grounded mindset tools because we really get to have this full transformation because the birth chart is a map of who you were born to be. And through time, we just put on so many layers of costume. I don't know why I chose that word, of programming and ideals of other people that were not meant for us. And if we use our birth chart as sort of the map of where we're going, we can come back home to ourselves. So I mix the mindset tools from being a trained mindset coach with astrology to really help women transform and be themselves again. And it's the most beautiful work. I'm so obsessed with what I do.
This is fascinating, especially because at the time of this recording, we just went through an eclipse right now. We're in Mercury in retrograde. And I'm a person that initially didn't believe much in astrology. Maybe the listener feels a little bit like that, like you have this skeptical side.
Mm-hmm.
But for many years, I've been following Susan Miller, which is another
Mm-hmm.
astrologer, and
Classic.
she was so on point. Every month I would read my thing, and like from the month before, and this has been going on for over a decade because one of my friends introduced me to that, and I was like, there has to be something to this. Like, as much as I had my skepticism, I was like, what kind of makes it's a science too, because the moon the tides get driven by the moon, like, so why wouldn't the planets and the positioning of the planets and of the moon and the earth and everything else affect? So I'm curious, share with us, how did you get into astrology? Was this something that you always believed? I'm just curious because my path was a little bit skeptical initially, but now I am a big believer in the planets and the positioning and like the solar eclipse that just happened yesterday, the Mercury in retrograde. So what was your journey? How did you get into astrology and believing in astrology and wanting to study it more in depth?
Oh man. So it's funny, I was actually raised Baptist and so like a very traditional Christian culture where things like astrology were, definitely not talked about and definitely considered to be inappropriate or maybe even sinful. But as I really came to do my own spiritual work and came back to my own spirituality and really deciding what I believed, I was always just curious about astrology because I could see the parts of myself that I was, I'm an Aries sun, Pisces moon, Scorpio rising, and I could start to pick out pieces of myself that were really, really aligned with those things. And so I just started to play with astrology, read Susan Miller every month. And then eventually I just started to take classes here and there and just piqued my curiosity and followed what was lighting me up. And eventually I was like, I love this. This is my favorite thing. I could talk about this all day. and I formalized my education. I went to Deborah Silverman's astrology school. She's another old school astrologer who's very cool. She's actually a Jungian astrologer. So Carl Jung was an astrologer, believe it or not. And so the way I learned astrology was in a merge of astrology and psychology. And so I'm such a nerd about the brain and how we work. And I just getting to do readings is like my playtime. It's the most fun thing ever. So it was a slow journey over like 20 years to come to astrology, but now I'm always learning new things about it. You could study astrology your whole life and not know everything because of how much there is, and there's different ways to read. It's so cool, so fun. I love it.
That's fascinating. And before we started this interview, you were talking a little bit about human design. Here we go
Mm.
again. This is another thing that keeps showing up for me in my sphere. Like I keep talking with people. I want to say maybe in the last year, human design has been very present around me, but I haven't gone deeper into it and understanding. But could you tell us a little bit about human design too and how that's
Yeah.
worked?
Yeah. So human design merges astrology, the I Ching, Kabbalah, the chakra system, modern spirituality, and it is just another tool to really self-reflect. That's how I used astrology as well. And basically, it's similar to astrology in the sense that you have certain types within your human design. But what I love about human design that differentiates from astrology is that it gives you more of a exact, like, this is how I operate and this is how I operate best. And so it actually tells us, like, this is what my intuition sounds like according to my human design. This is how I need to delegate according to my human design. It's even more a woo-woo than astrology because human design was channeled by somebody in the 80s, but it's just become more and more popular. And when I use it with clients, they are blown away by how accurate it is. And so I'm a generator, which is one of the main types. And so for me, it's all about following what lights me up, what gives me energy. Generators are the most common type. It's 70% of the population are generators. And we're supposed to keep the society moving forward. And there are other types that are supposed to be the observers and really help us to see the better way to do things. Those are our projectors. And then there's our multifaceted manifestors and manifesting generators. And then there's a type that's 1% of the population called reflectors. I've actually never met a reflector because it's such a rare type, but they are really here to reflect things to us as a society, and they are like hermits who live in the woods, which is probably why I haven't met any. But it's just a really fun reflective tool, and more and more I'm using it with clients as well, because especially that intuition piece, people love having a clear, this is what my intuition sounds like, and that's been so valuable for me as well in my own life. So yeah, it's a really interesting one.
That's fascinating. I so want to dive deeper. And especially, I'm the type of person that when I get information, like someone recommends a book one time and then you hear it again the second time in a week. And then the third time, it's like I keep getting the nudges with human design. So I'm going to want
Yeah.
to dive deeper into that too. And I love that you're mixing all of these different modalities, from astrology to human design. And it sounds like the bottom line and what's holding everything together is intuition. You've used that word a couple of times. Talk to us about intuition, and how you've utilized intuition in your life. I know you're currently living intuitively. Those are your words.
Yes.
What does that mean? Let's go deeper with this whole idea of
So for me, living intuitively is following my intuition, even when it doesn't make sense. And in the last couple of years, I've really taken it to a new level, and in the sense that my decisions are driven by my intuition in my business, in my life, and right now where I'm living. So I was living in Miami last year, and I just intuitively had a pull that I was supposed to travel. And, in the middle of building a business, traveling doesn't necessarily make sense, but I just kept hearing the pull. I was feeling it in my body. According to human design, my intuition type really is a type where I feel a gut pull. And for me, it manifests often as like a physical pull forward. And I was feeling called to travel. So starting last summer, I went to Europe. I traveled all around Europe, came back, spent some time in Quebec, and I've been floating around for the last few months. And it has been just the most transformative period of my life because I've learned to trust and surrender and be at peace with myself wherever I am. And I don't think I would have gotten all of these life lessons if I had stayed where I was. And so, intuition, bottom line, is really listening to myself. And when I was younger, I just turned 38. Not that is old, but when I was younger, I was so worried about what other people thought. And I was so worried about making the right decision. And I would calculate, what decision is going to get me X result. And what I learned over time and trial and error is that when I listen to my intuition, I'm always heading in the right direction, even if the place I'm led is to a lesson or to something that's not necessarily easy. It's always what I need to learn to grow. And so, intuition, I think, is that guiding voice inside of us that is not easy to listen to. It can be very difficult to discern, and it can be difficult to take action from it because, society is going to tell us to live a certain way. And sometimes our intuition is going to tell us to do the different thing. But I find that when I live intuitively, my life is much more magical. I'm in New York right now for a few weeks, which has been amazing. I was walking down the street in Brooklyn, had an intuitive pull to go to this bookstore, was looking for the bookstore, and I ran into a roommate that I had when I lived in a different city. Neither of us live in Brooklyn. And it was like this magical moment of coincidence. And it was all because I followed my intuition. And the more I listened to my intuition, the more magic kind of shows up. That was a long answer.
I love it. No, I even want to go take it further. So how do you override the rational logic part of the brain, like our programming that we've been given by society, by our parents, just everything, the media, the culture, our religion, like everything. And they're saying one thing because this is the norm. You just said it.
Mhm.
The culture gives us these programming. Like, how do we override it when our intuition's saying something different?
Man, it is different for everyone. And I think the first step is always taking the intuitive step and working through the discomfort of doing the different thing. So if logic is driving us towards one avenue, but our intuition is pulling us in the other direction, 9 times out of 10, we're going to do what is familiar and comfortable. I'm sure that you've heard before that our minds are programmed towards safety and certainty, and living intuitively is a life of uncertainty in many ways. And so the first step in creating a new habit is always to work through the discomfort of making the new choice. It's why so many of us stay stuck for so long, is that we're unwilling to go through even minor discomfort when we take it a new step. And so if you are really pulled between logic and intuition, I would start to ask yourself some deep questions. When has following my intuition served me? When has following my logic served me? Where has logic led me before? Where has intuition led me before? I know that if I do a deep dive into my past, I have some pretty clear moments in my life, turning points, where I did not listen to my intuition and, things shit hit the fan. And so if we do that self-reflection, I think most of us will see that there are so many advantages to living intuitively, but the other facet of my work is mindset work. And so it's really diving deep into the way we view the world and like looking at, is this how I really feel? Or is this just what society has told me to feel? Or is this what my parents told me to feel? Or is this what the patriarchy wants me to feel? And really examining what is true for you can also be a really important step in discerning your intuitive voice.
That was beautifully said. We're going to take a quick break and we'll come right back because I want to ask you some more questions along this line.
Awesome.
I want to share an amazing opportunity, my signature event, Increase Your Income and Impact. It's happening May 31st through June 1st, of Thursday through Saturday, in person in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And this event will be infusing it with a ton of the success principles from Napoleon Hill. You will walk away after these 3 days shifting your mindset from not enough money to manifesting on the spot. You'll also learn how to get over your fear of visibility in sales so that you can have a greater impact in the world. These in-person events are life transforming, and you can now get your early bird ticket with the code LUCKY24 and save $400 for a limited time. I look forward to seeing you there. Just listen to what some of the participants have to say about it.
The thing that I gain the most from this is really seeing my potential. I see that I have an incredible amount of potential and that my visions are not too big and they're totally valid and that I am so capable of doing these things. It just now I'm seeing strategies that I'm not applying in my life. Like I'm needing more structure for my life and my business and my finances and the things that I love and my play and passions and work. And so now I'm seeing that I need structure. And also it just feels so inspired to go home and truly apply these things, because now I see that application is the only thing that I am lacking from getting me to the place that I want to be.
Okay, so we were just diving deeper into intuition, overriding our rational and logical side of the brain. And you made it sound like it's so much easier. And the word that kept coming up for me is courage. It's like when you follow your intuition and go against what the programming is, what the logic side of the mind or the brain is, it takes courage. You have to jump in and do something that's different than what we're used to.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a story or two of how you did that and it just didn't make any sense whatsoever? Besides the one that you just told us before about Miami and the Brooklyn too. What other stories do you have where you were like confronted and like it did require tapping into courage and just saying, I'm doing this?
There's so many stories. I don't know where to choose, but I guess I'll start with saying, I think a lot of us have experienced a lot of darkness in our lives, and I have experienced a lot myself. And for me, I went through a period of life. It was a 2-year period where I got out of a relationship. I got laid off from my job. My dog got cancer and passed away, and I had to move. And that all happened within 2 years. And during that time, I got to a really low place. And I spent a lot of time thinking about, who do I want to be? How do I want to remember my life? And I'm single, so I have that advantage of being able to move around. But I really got to a point where I was like, I want to be proud of me. I want to live a life that I'm proud of, not anybody else. And it was not easy or comfortable, but I knew at the end of my life, if I'm going to reflect back, hopefully I live to be a very old lady. I knew that I wanted to be the kind of person who is going to take the risk, who is going to take the jump. I'm an Aries, so we're naturally brave. So I also have that advantage. But courage is something that I do tap into. And I think it creates tension for other people because my life and living in a different way shows other people their own shit. I hope we can cuss on this podcast.
You're totally fine. Go for it.
Okay. But so in 2022, when all of this stuff happened, when I lost my job and my relationship, I felt that pull to move. And I didn't know where I was going to move, but I was like, I had a feeling I should move towards the ocean because I'm a water baby. Water is very healing for me. I'd just gone through a lot of trauma and I visited Miami and I was walking along South Beach. If you've ever been to South Beach on Ocean Avenue, and I was just looking at the ground and the name Kester, which is my last name, somebody had graffitied into the ground in South Beach. It's on Ocean and 7th if you're in South Beach. And for me, it was like a sign of like, okay, I guess I'm going to move to Miami. And that sounds crazy to a lot of people, but there is no graffiti on the whole boardwalk. I have ran up and down all of South Beach, all of Miami, because I'm a runner. And there is no other writing in the cement except for Kester. And it's Miami, it's South Florida. Why would Kester be there? Not, like a more Latin name or something like that. So I took the leap. I went to Miami for a year and I had just the most healing, beautiful year of just being with myself and reconnecting back to me. And taking that time, taking that leap enabled me to, it set me up to be able to travel full time right now because I was able to take the time I needed to heal. And some people listening to this are going to think, wow, that lady is nuts. But I followed my intuition and I followed the signs. Like I said, I'm spiritual and woo woo. And it was a beautiful year. Yeah, there's so many intuitive stories.
This is fabulous. I love that one, Lauren. And we have a similar tie with Miami because I studied in Miami and you can listen. I think it's episode 16 or 15. I think it's 16 with Pippa Seacrest. She was the founder of Miami Ad School and she,
Oh,
you know, her
wow.
and her husband, Ron Seacrest, and it's all about the story of how they started the school. I was the second class, and I'm not going to get into details because you can listen in the episode, but I landed in that school by my intuition too. So I
Mm.
love that this happened at Miami. I also had a pool because of water. I wanted to go to a place with a body of water and everything else. So I love these stories. So on the flip side, tell us a story where you didn't follow your intuition and you learned from that, where you heard it loud and clear. It sounded strange. You're like, no, I'm not going to follow that. It seems like this is the right path and let me go this way. Because it's always great to hear all the wonderful things and I'm following my intuition and I'm living in flow and my life is magical. But what about the times that we didn't
Oh,
listen to
man.
our intuition and it's like, okay, lesson learned, lesson learned.
I love this question because I think that us as self-development professionals, we need to talk more about the reality of it because it's not always magical. It's not always happy. So I've definitely been through key moments where I haven't listened to my intuition, and they have been major turning points for me. So about a decade ago now, I was living in New York and I was working in film and TV. I was actually working for Saturday Night Live and I was working in the office. It was my dream job. I had logically wanted to work there my whole life. I would stay up to watch it every week. Like it was a dream job. And I was there and I was miserable. And my whole body, my intuition, everything was saying, like, get out of here. And it ended up being one of the darkest periods of my life. I got depression for the first time. I really just went through some emotional struggles, but it was logically like no one leaves Saturday Night Live. Like it's not an easy job to get. Like I got there through my intuition. Through a series of coincidences, I ended up getting the job there. But my intuition after I got there was like, you got to go. And I didn't listen. I didn't listen. I didn't listen. And I only stayed there 2 seasons. So eventually I did listen, but I got more and more depressed. Things in my life fell apart, relationships fell apart, and I just sank lower and lower, lower until eventually it felt like I was like pushed out by my intuitions. Like you weren't listening, and so we're gonna push you out of here. It's like I got to the point where I did quit, but it was really, really tough to leave. And everyone in my life was like, "What are you doing? Why would you leave this job?" But I had to. I had to. Another example that comes to mind is a significant relationship in my life, and I think some people may relate to this story. One of the loves of my life, I would say, on our third date, my intuition said clearly no. But my desire and logic and, feelings of love kept me in a relationship for 3 years, and it ended brutally. And, I had to learn that lesson, but if I'd listened to that intuition, I would have saved myself a lot of pain, that's for sure. So the intuition was speaking clearly, but my logic overrode in both of those circumstances, and it just kind of took me to a place that I don't want to revisit.
Do you think you followed your logic because it felt more comfortable, more safe? Like what were the reasons to not listen to your
Ah,
intuition and just go with logic?
In regards to the job at SNL, I think I really enjoyed that I worked at a place that had prestige. My family was proud of me. People in my life thought I was really cool. And I really was seeking that external validation. And so I was very driven by the comfort that that brought me and the safety that I got from being accepted by others. Not that I wasn't accepted before, but it was a very comfortable place to be. And it felt safe because I was doing something that other people approved of, right? And in regards to the relationship, I think I was seeking comfort in terms of like having a partner can be very comfortable. And I desired that comfort and I didn't want to be alone at that point in my life. Now I love being alone and I'm still seeking partnership, but I think I'm much more discerning about the type of partners I bring into my life. But it was much more comfortable to just keep the path, to stay the course. And then at a certain point, it became deeply uncomfortable because I was going against what my body was telling me. I'm very into listen, like your intuition is speaking through your mind, through your gut, through your body. It speaks to us in so many different ways. But in both of those examples, my body started to get really tense and my body I got health issues. I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease because I wasn't listening to my intuition. Like I had to learn these lessons through some real trial and error.
But it's amazing how aware you are and how you bring it back to you learn the lessons. I think there's a lot of people out there that because they're so disconnected from their intuition that they don't know, like they have the sickness, they have the illness, they're in that relationship that they know it's not going anywhere, or they're like, oh, well, maybe one day it'll change, or when the kids get older and they're out of the house, I'll make that decision. It's like, so your level of awareness is amazing, of just seeing that, Lauren, and saying, oh my God, well, that was the lesson. Okay, I learned. I'm a big believer that if we don't get the lesson on the first time, it'll happen to us again.
Oh, yeah.
It's like
Oh,
over and over until we get it.
I completely agree. If we don't listen to the lesson, it's going to come back. So I might as well take the lesson, even if it's tough, because it's much easier than repeating it over and over again.
Yeah. And what about how do we connect to our intuition and listen to those messages? Like you were talking like about a certain illnesses showing up, or the autoimmune disease or certain like so the intuition is speaking to you. How do we hear intuition? Like what's the language of intuition, I guess is my question.
So from my life experience, and through studying human design, I have come to believe that intuition speaks to us all differently. And it speaks to us differently at different times where we're able to hear it more times than others. So in human design, there's different ways that we hear our intuition. So my type is very guttural, like I feel it in my gut. It's a gut yes or no. It's very black and white. And that is, if you're a generator, you might have that same type. There are other types in human design where it's very much like a whisper. It comes in and it leaves very quickly. And if you don't take that action right away, it's hard to latch onto. There's actually in human design a type that is a mixture of your mind and your body, where you're really tuning into both. That one can be very confusing. And all of the types in human design, in that theory of listening to your intuition that way, are guides, I think. So I primarily hear my intuition through my gut, but I also have heard it through whispers. Like I sometimes will hear words, like, or I'll have thoughts that I can't shake. And so it's developing that muscle of hearing and taking action. And it's like any practice. I'm not a yogi, but I'm sure it's like yoga. Like the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And if you start to take those little actions, you build that trust muscle with your intuition. And I recommend to all of my clients starting small, especially if this is a brand new exercise. I tell my clients to take like intuitive walks, just let your feet guide you. Don't make a plan, don't try to plan it. I said that twice. And letting your intuition guide where you turn, where you are led, and having that be a way you just play and be with your intuition. Something I let every day when I do Wordle in the New York Times app, I let my intuition choose my word. And I got to tell you, I'm the only one that I know who got Wordle in one. maybe there's some other people out there who got it.
That is awesome. I love it. I'm always like, oh yeah, I made it, but I've never gotten it and won. That is amazing, Lauren.
Thank you. The word I got it was bread. It was last year, but so it's not like I, am perfect or always get the right wordle, but it's just the way that I play with my intuition because I think in self-development gets very serious. And so in intuition work, it can be something we can play with. And so I like to be with my intuition in the way that like it feels fun and good because I think that's an energy that I want to create more of in my life. And so starting small by just listening to the whispers is going to turn the whispers into louder voices they are more able to hear. And I think fear overrides intuition a lot. And so learning to differentiate which voice is which is another really critical piece because fear is going to be oftentimes that repetitive like honk 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 thing that you can't shake that's coming from your mind, but oftentimes our intuition is coming from a whisper in our body. And so it's still going to be different for everyone, which is why there's not a lot of people teaching intuition because it can be so nuanced. But I believe that we're our own experts. I know what's best for me and you know what's best for you. And so the more you listen to your intuition, the more you can take actions from that place instead of the place of society, logic, fear, or programming and all that stuff.
This is fabulous. Let me ask you on that note, what other practices do you have to connect with your intuition? Like you were just saying about doing the intuitive walks, like without going to, I'm going to put that one in place. I don't use that one or I haven't used it in a long time. And I'm like, yes, ding, ding, ding. I'm going to do that one. But what other practices do you do? I'm curious to hear about your daily habits of connecting with your intuition.
So everything I do is really simple. I meditate, but I wouldn't say meditation is my main connection point. I think that a lot of us think, oh, I should meditate. And I love meditation, but I find that I clear my mind much more in order to hear my intuition when I do morning pages. I'm sure you've all heard of Julia Cameron's morning pages. I've been doing them every morning for like 20 years.
You and I are so connected because I've been doing them since 97. So
Oh, so
however
good.
long that is now, I think more than 20. I was going to say 20 years too, but I think it's longer, Lauren.
We won't do the math.
Yeah, but I love that. Yes. Tell us more about morning pages and how that's worked for you.
Oh man. So morning pages is super simple if you've never heard of it. It's just when you wake up, writing stream of consciousness, journaling in your journal. And you try to do at least 3 pages. I find that when we start a practice like morning pages, we really judge what we're writing. But as you do it more, you kind of lift some of that self-judgment and it does helps you to hear your intuition more because you're getting all of the gunk out first thing in the morning. And for me, it really clears my mind. So I'm like, I'll write about what I'm, worried about or the thoughts I can't shake. And it creates a space of clarity because if it's out of my mind and onto a piece of paper, I'm much more able to hear myself. So waking up, writing in your journal, 3 pages, that's Julia Cameron's recommendation. I find that 3 pages is the perfect amount because on that page 3 is when I really get the intuitive downloads. The first 2 pages usually are just like muck about what's on my mind, that it's stuff that I just need to get out. So I love, love morning pages. I do a lot of intuitive walks. I move my body a lot. I'm a runner. So I get a lot of intuitive hits just from doing movement. Because with my own astrology and my human design, I gotta move my body in order to tune in. And also, another practice that's just become really important to me is just tuning into my body through simple body scan awareness. Where am I tense right now? Where am I relaxed right now? How am I feeling? Because I think so many of us live with a little bit of tension in our bodies all the time, especially in the times we're living in. And it's, completely justified. We're living in unprecedented times that just seems like the precedents just keep getting, life is not easy right now. So really trying to relieve the tension in my body just by bringing simple awareness, taking deep breaths. Like I'm always going to tell my clients to return to the breath. It's the best tool we have that we never use because we think it has to be fancy. Our self-development has to, be more intense than just breathing. But the more I bring my awareness to my body, it's another way I really hear myself more, because you just start to notice like, oh, I have tension in my lower back. I wonder why. Okay, let's give some gentle love there. Let's take some breath there. And just creating a different relationship between my mind, body, and intuition is another way that I hear myself more.
These are fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing these, Lauren. And I can't believe so many parallels that we have going on
I love it.
with these.
Coincidence.
Yes, it's wonderful. And so we'll go deeper into intuition, how to tap into our intuition in our mentorship private call. But meanwhile, you were talking before, like when you were in SNL, when you were working, at that particular job. It happened to me too in advertising, working in New York City too. From the outside in, it looks very glamorous, but then inside you feel like you're dying, like it's not in alignment, and that is your intuition speaking to you. But how do we overcome this external image, external validation, the fears again, of like, oh my God, but if I leave this, who am I going to be? Like everyone identify, like sees me in this particular image.
Mhm.
We go back to courage, but like how do we avoid not getting to the point where we've hit that illness, or that we've, you know what I mean? Like where we can save ourselves before having to get hit by the 4x4, instead of just like listening, like something's not right now. Something's not right in the relationship. I'm not feeling comfortable. And yes, but then you have the other voice, because it's almost like this battle of voices, right? You have your intuition speaking to you, maybe not so loud. It's whispering initially, like you were saying, and it gets louder and louder until it's like, okay, we went into an illness, or we went into whatever, because you're not listening to me. How do we overcome that before it hits hard?
This is a great question. And it's going to be, I've certainly learned, like I've already said, the wrong way too many times. So it's gotten to a point where I can't let myself get to those breaking points anymore. But I think the more we give ourselves permission to listen to ourselves, the easier it becomes. And I think our body is sending us these messages all the time. And it's giving ourselves a little bit of space, a little bit of acknowledgement of, hey, my body is like, something's going on right now. I'm feeling more stress. I have a close friend who's just always anxious. And I adore her, but she's like not listening to those anxious feelings that are sending her a message, right? And so we got to really listen to our body. And so part of mindset work and intuition work is that we have to get to a place within our nervous system, which I'm sure you've gone into another podcast, where we got to calm down our body before we can change our mind. So if you are in a state of like, I think something needs to change, first work on calming down your body. Do simple breathing exercises, do some stretching, do some yoga, drink some water. Go put your feet on the earth. Calm down your body first before you start to work on really making that exit plan. Because if you're going to take action from a dysregulated emotional place, your outcome is not going to be as favorable as you might like it to be. So first calm down your body. And I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast is probably like has an achiever or an over mindset. And so if we're used to always being in achievement, we make self-development or even calming down our body like this big goal. Is like, let's actually build in some gentleness and some like, let's make it like not a to-do list item. Let's make it something that can be very calming and create some ease. So calm down your body, get into your nervous system. Deep breaths is the first thing. Like you can do your ice baths, you can do your cold showers, you can do all these other amazing nervous system tools, but like, how do we really like just get into your body, get into your breath. First step. And then secondly, really start to ask yourself those deep questions. I credit so much of my personal growth to my first coach, whose name is Jenna Hitchcock, and she doesn't even coach anymore. But she was the first one working with a coach and helped me to hear me first. So I probably should have mentioned that, but really helped me to pick out what thoughts were mine and what thoughts were societal. So if you've never worked with a coach, it's a great time and you're in this place, it's a great time to start, because a good coach is going to hopefully guide you towards yourself and hear yourself more. But of course, there's a million books on questions you can ask yourself and coaching yourself. But for me, I really needed that external feedback when I was in these lower places in my life. So calming down your body, analyzing your thoughts and questioning, are these mine? And then taking the action, the uncomfortable action. Remember that your body and mind are going to go towards what's familiar. And that might be staying in the uncomfortable place. So if we might stay in a relationship we know is bad for us because we are familiar with it. And so taking the step out of the relationship is going to feel very uncomfortable, even if we're very unhappy. Sometimes we stay in anxiety, we stay in these bad circumstances because it's actually so familiar to our nervous system. And so knowing like, hey, the discomfort is a part of it. I don't want to be uncomfortable, but man, it's going to feel better on the other side. And it's a leap of faith. Sometimes I feel like I just rambled, but
No, that was great, Lauren. And going into our body and calming our nervous system, episode 47 with Teresa Lear Levine is great too, because she talks a lot about that and using EFT too. There's so many different modalities in this. So I think it's great to hear everyone's perspective and how we utilize it, because when you listen to different people, you're like, okay, I can grab this tool and that tool. I'm going to take another quick pause before we wrap up. I want to share an amazing opportunity, my signature event, Increase Your Income and Impact. It's happening May 31st through June 1st, of Thursday through Saturday, in person in Santa Fe, New Mexico. In this event, we'll be infusing it with a ton of the success principles from Napoleon Hill. You will walk away after these 3 days shifting your mindset from not enough money to manifesting on the spot. You'll also learn how to get over your fear of visibility in sales so that you can have a greater impact in the world. These in-person events are life transforming, and you can now get your early bird ticket with the code LUCKY24 and save $400 for a limited time. I look forward to seeing you there. Just listen to what some of the participants have to say about it.
I just love being in Tanya's program. Where do I start? The other women in the program are such a treat to spend time with and be with. Tanya holds a space that really brings out the best in me, in my material life and in my spiritual life, which is most important to me. And I have made back my investment in the program many times over. I haven't quite counted how many times over, but it's at least 5 times, maybe 10 times. The business support is really applicable to any kind of business, and it's just really juicy. I can be myself. What more can I say? It's really the best. It's fabulous, fabulous business coaching entrepreneur program. Do it. You won't regret it.
So we're back, and as we're wrapping up here towards the end of the podcast, I know you're not a parent, but for parents that we think we know everything, because this happens to me as a mom, like I know more than my 10-year-old. But on the flip side, I've also been taught through her that she is really connected to her intuition. And I don't want to stifle that, because I do believe kids are much more connected with their intuition because they're still learning how to speak and communicate and relate and other things. So if there's anyone that's really connected with their intuition, it's the kids, and as we get older, it gets stripped away from us. And I've had several moments that this has happened to me with my daughter. What would you say to parents like myself to encourage kids to listen to them, or for me to be open, or for parents to be open and listen to their kids' intuition versus like my rational, or I know better because I'm a parent?
Right. What a great question. So again, I'm not a parent. I do work with a ton of moms. I think most of my clients right now are moms. But I will caveat this with, I've never been a parent to a human, only to animals. But I would say the strategies that have been most effective for my clients have been very simple. It would start with listening to your child and asking them simply, like, what do you feel right now? Where are you feeling that in your body? What does that feeling mean to you? And just act like being a little detective with your own child about what they're feeling, when they're feeling, and not judging it as much as you can. And letting a child have a little bit more agency in following their intuition is going to feel uncomfortable for a parent. And there's some things obviously we shouldn't let our kids do. We're not going to like let them play with knives or whatever, but really listening to your own body as you're parenting and noticing, am I uncomfortable because this is what's best for them, or am I uncomfortable because this is unfamiliar to me? This is more woo woo, but there's this theory. This is where it's going to get a little witchy. There's the theory about kids born in the last generation they're called indigo children. And it's a theory that the kids born recently are here to help us as a society to come back to where we should be and to start to love each other again. And so I agree with you that our children are more connected maybe than we are. But I would say, like, try to learn from your kids. I'm an aunt, and so my nieces and nephews are like little sponges, and they just like I'm grateful to have great siblings who are great parents, but they let their kids really explore and play with their like they live with their imagination, which is intuition. And so as parents, I think it's can be really helpful to let the kid be them, even if it's uncomfortable for the parent.
That is great, great advice. Yes, I've encountered that over and over. I have to ask you something else because I know you used to be, or I don't know if you still do it, a psychic animal communicator. And
Oh gosh.
you just brought up, it came to my mind because you were saying you're a parent to animals. And I'm like, can we go there with intuition? I mean, obviously, you would be a psychic animal communicator because of intuition and connecting with other beings. How did that, and maybe we could do a whole other episode of that, Lauren, but just
Man.
give us a little brief something.
Sure. So I will caveat this by saying, like, I'm always trying to develop my intuition. So I take classes from other folks who are further along in their intuition journey. There's a psychic and a medical medium named Heather Carlucci. She has an incredible psychic intuition development class. I recommend it a lot.
Heather Carlucci or Heather?
Heather Carlucci. And I took her class, and then I took another class on speaking to animals from a woman named Nikki Vascones is the name of this teacher. I took a psychic development class to speak to animals, and it blew my freaking mind. It was one of the coolest classes I've ever done. And if you take that class, and it's not too expensive, anyone can do it. I learned very quickly how intuitive I was, and I actually spoke to animals in the class. And how the class is set up is that you look at a photo of an animal and you just kind of wait to see if they send you any intuitive messages. And the owner of that animal is also in the class. And so I got confirmation that I was right. We were looking at a photo of a cow of all things. And I was just like, I kept hearing the word rose, and I didn't know why. I was like, I've never talked to a cow before. Like, I don't know anything about this. This is weird, but like, I'm here. And then I was like, you know what? I don't know why, but I just keep hearing this cow say rose. And the owner of the cow is like, that's this cow's mom. Her mom was named Rose. And so
Wow.
it's like, what in the world? And so I've played with it's nothing I've ever done for money because I want to make sure I'm really developed and refined in this gift. But I've talked to all my friends' animals, and I've tried to connect to my dog who has passed. But our animals are also like, if anyone, we had the eclipse yesterday, and animals are so sensitive, and they were all feeling the eclipse. Like the birds were louder during the eclipse. Like we're all intuitive creatures, and If anyone didn't think I was a woo-woo weirdo before, they might now, but
No, but this is fascinating. I think
so
we need to
cool.
give voice to more of these things because they've become a little bit taboo, and back in the day, you'd get burned for even mentioning
Totally.
these kind of things. So thank you for
Totally.
sharing that, Lauren. Well, as we're wrapping up, I always like asking this, like, what's one thing our listeners can do to live a life with more courage?
Oh man. I would say to remember that courage starts with the small step. We overcomplicate it. We think we have to quit our jobs and move to, wherever and dump the boyfriend, but it's the small steps that you take every day that are the most courageous. And so remembering that courage for you can be as simple as, taking a deep breath. Today I'm going to have the courage to slow down and listen to my body. So
Oh, great. That is beautiful. Thank you for that. And I feel like you've been channeling for me. Your energy is so calming. And I started my day in this rush energy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I just had this conversation
so
with Lauren.
glad.
So this is beautiful. You were amazing, Lauren. Thank you so much for sharing
Thank
with
you.
us today.
Thank you for such great questions.
Hi there. I have something really cool for you. I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. You can check out all the details in the show notes, and all you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course.